Hello, my name is Zach Martinson, and today I will be doing my presentation on the top offensive National Football League players of all time by position. And because this is such a debated subject, I'll be providing criteria for the reasons why I think each player is the greatest. So we'll be talking about quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. We'll be taking into consideration Super Bowl and playoff wins, as well as most or highest amount of yardage and touchdowns at each position, as well as other awards, if they're a Hall of Famer, if they've been an MVP, or if they're Pro Bowlers, and then of course the game changer element on whether they have impacted the game other than statistically. So we'll start with quarterbacks. So due to this criteria, the best quarterback of all time is Tom Brady. And first, just to show, he has won the most Super Bowls and had the most playoff wins by any starting quarterback of all time. 5 beats out the next QB, which I believe is Joe Montana, by 1, and playoff wins is by a few as well. His yardage and touchdowns are very high, but not the top, but still high enough to really be considered. And of course, he has won 4 Super Bowl MVPs out of his 5 Super Bowls. And some may say that Joe Montana is the best of all time, and the argument there is that Tom Brady has more yards, touchdowns, and Super Bowl wins than Joe Montana. So that really plays into it. As well as obviously the times that they played. A passing league is what the NFL is more now than it was, but Tom Brady has really perfected the position. Next, we have running backs, and I have chosen Emmitt Smith of the Dallas Cowboys. Emmitt Smith has won 3 Super Bowls and has the he's the all-time leading rusher of all time career, 18,000 plus yards. He has 164 touchdowns, and he is an 8-time Pro Bowler, 1 NFL Super Bowl MVP, and he is a Hall of Famer. He has won the most Super Bowls of any of the running backs that were in the running. Some may say Barry Sanders or Walter Payton are the greatest of all time, but because they've never won Super Bowls, they don't have the most yardage. That Emmitt Smith really kind of takes the cake here for running backs, but it is, of course, close. Wide receivers is Jerry Rice, and I would have to say that it is hard to argue that Jerry Rice that anyone is better than Jerry Rice at the wide receiver position. He has the most yardage, receptions, and touchdowns by any wide receiver, and it's by a big margin. He beats out the yardage he has 22,000. The next person has 15,000. Receptions, he has 1,500. The next guy has 1,300. And touchdowns, he has 197. The next person has 156, which is pretty huge. So 13 Pro Bowler and has won 29 playoff games. And of course, he is in the Hall of Fame. And it is very hard to dispute who, if anyone, is better than Jerry Rice at wide receiver, just based off yardage alone. He is the greatest for sure. Our final position is tight end. I've chosen Tony Gonzalez. He is a 14 Pro. He's won 14 Pro Bowls, no Super Bowls, but he leads the NFL in receptions and yards at the position, as well as touchdowns. And he is by far the greatest at those in those statistics. Jason Witten and Antonio Gates are close behind in 1 or 2 of these. However, Tony is still beyond those guys by far. He has not won a Super Bowl, but there really hasn't been like a one tight end that has won multiple Super Bowls that would contest his position. So that's why I put him at number 1 at tight end. And those are all the positions, but I do have some honorable mentions. I mentioned Joe Montana, who he only had about 40,000 plus yards compared to Brady's was it 60,000. But of course, at the time, it was a if you know anything about National Football League history, it's only been a passing game recently in the past 20 or so years. It used to be a very big run game. So passing for 40,000 yards was the record until Brett Favre and Peyton Manning, of course, Tom Brady really entered the picture and then started passing over everybody. As well as Joe has won it multiple Super Bowls. So it's a competition for quarterback, but Brady has really taken the cake in recent years. Running backs, Walter Payton and Barry Sanders both have less yardage, less touchdowns, and less Super Bowls. Neither of them have won a Super Bowl than Emmitt Smith. However, both of them have played less years than Smith, and I've done the math, and it showed that both guys would have exceeded the record for all-time yardage rushing. They just didn't play as long because both of them were on very bad teams, and both of them couldn't win a Super Bowl because the team really dragged them down. So that's why they have honorable mentions. All three of these guys, of course, are in the Hall of Fame, including the next tight end, Dave Casper. He, again, not even Tony Gonzalez has like 1,000 more receptions and 10,000 more yards than Dave Casper does. However, Dave Casper was again played back in the days like Montana, and he really changed the game for tight ends because they used to just be extra blockers, and because of Dave Casper and then Tony Gonzalez really perfecting the position, they really opened it up to really being pass catchers. And of course, I haven't put any wide receivers on here because there's no one even close to what Jerry Rice has done. So he's undisputedly the best at his position. So thank you for listening, and I hope you learned a lot about the NFL today. Thank you.